Peace, 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 peace. I am Rami Salamel. I thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. We have an amazing class today, but before we get to the information, I want to read you something from Noble Drew Ali, Divine Universal Prophet, to set the tone for what we're about to get into. This is titled, A Warning from the Prophet. For all governors and grand sheiks and head officials of all temples, renew your acts, amend your ways, because the great conference is on its way, and in it is where the law will be enforced before the great grand body. The continuance of the present officers in the temple will depend on your past good work. Those who have been delinquent may now know, that they will not be tolerated any longer, because this great divine and national movement must move on according to law. These things shall be proclaimed. There is no favorite in any of the temples, for the law is laid down, and everyone who claims a part of the work must be governed accordingly. I'll read that sentence one more time. There is no favorite in any of the temples, for the law is laid down, and everyone who claims a part of the work, everybody that claims a part, must be governed accordingly. All are one. There is but one temple in this nation, and there is but one prophet of the temples. I come to speak to all nations, bringing them the message of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Prophet Noble Drew Ali. That's a warning now. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Supreme Grand Council, yes, I done brought it up again, and we're going to stay on this until we get it addressed. For those that are aware, just kick back. I'm going to give a little intro. For those that are not aware about the Supreme Grand Council, please listen closely. I want to break it down for you. All right, so the Supreme Grand Council issue, it's really like a three-part problem, so let me break it down. The first part of the problem is that we don't have a functioning, active, valid Supreme Grand Council. We don't have people that were properly and lawfully elected and put into those positions. It's not doing its duties and its obligations, on a daily, and it hasn't been doing this for years. And this component, or this piece to this, the Moorish Science Temple of America, the Supreme Grand Council, is an integral. It's a very necessary piece to make this whole thing operate the way it's supposed to. And so currently we don't have that. Part two of the problem is that most of the Moors and the Moorish Americans, the Muslims that are members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, are not fully aware and informed and have a good understanding of what the Supreme Grand Council is and how it's supposed to be operating and functioning within our organization. That's part two of the issue. And then the third part, is that the people that do know about the Supreme Grand Council, the people that do understand its functions and its, its obligations, its duties, the grand sheiks, the grand governors, the chairmans, the teachers, the Moorish American teachers that you see, most of them are either remaining silent about this issue and the Supreme Grand Council in general and just don't speak on it, or they intentionally speak misinformation and disinformation and speak about and try to deflect people away from the Supreme Grand Council. They will belittle or disrespect or disregard the Supreme Grand Council. And that is also a huge issue within our movement. But I don't, as we proceed through this video, I don't just want to tell you things. Wise man taught me that man knows nothing by being told. So instead, I would like to show you. Let's roll it.
The Supreme Grand Council was created by Noble Drew Ali and assisted the following duties and responsibilities: to control and supervise all the affairs of the Moorish Science Temple of America, to control and supervise all the properties of the Moorish Science Temple of America, to be the sole judge of what constitutes conduct injurious to order, peace and interest and welfare of the Moorish Science Temple of America, to be the sole judge of what constitutes conduct at variance with the Constitution and bylaws, rules and regulations made of the Moorish Science Temple of America to be the sole judge of any sufficiency of the evidence by which such conduct is shown. So just for clarity's sake, Supreme Grand Council is in fact something that Noble Drew Ali said we needed. Yes, it's something that Noble Drew Ali said we needed. And it was something that Noble Drew Ali established.
All right, so now you heard it and you've seen it for yourself. A breakdown of the Supreme Grand Council talking about what its actual functions and capacities are. And on top of that, you know what I mean, you heard him say it is needed. And in fact, it is needed. I agree. The Supreme Grand Council is needed. It was established by Noble Drew Ali, which is a universal divine prophet. You know what he's doing. You know what I mean? So we need to follow Noble Drew Ali's guidance. The Supreme Grand Council is necessary for Moorish Americans. But I don't want to just leave it in the theoretical sense of just giving a description of the Supreme Grand Council, but I wanted to provide some real, tangible, practical examples of how the Supreme Grand Council would work when we get it back to functioning properly. We're going to speak that into existence. So without further ado, let's get this throwback clip going, and then I'll come back and talk about it.
You say it's one way, and I say it's another way. And the Supreme Grand Council is in place. And you and I say, well, since you and I can't reach a decision on that, then let's take this matter to the Supreme Grand Council and see what they say. We take the matter to the Supreme Grand Council. They issue their ruling, their opinion, and they present it, and it's binding on both parts because we accept the authority, therefore the authority of the Supreme Council. And even if that ruling supports my position or not, you see, I'm bound by it. And that prevents you and I from pulling apart. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we believe is going to bring unity throughout the movement, mm-hmm, and preserve unity once we have achieved it. Mm-hmm. That's what I think is most important at this time. I agree. This unity is bringing about this unity, mm-hmm, and the Supreme Grand Council is the key to bringing about that unity.
Mm-hmm. I agree. The Supreme Grand Council gives us a loud voice. It gives the members a loud voice, the officers a loud voice. It gives a fair voice, according to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali law.
Aye. Now you heard the elders. They broke it down. If one Moor is saying it's this way and this Moors are saying it's that way, and they can't come to some sort of understanding on the issue, they can take it to the Supreme Grand Council. And the Supreme Grand Council can rule on the issue, and that ruling will be binding on both parties. So, for example, let's say, Rami is saying, hey, we need to be about love and peace and unity, and we need to go out and build with other nations and other people, and we need to be peace and loving and no weapons, no arms. And then you got this other group saying, nah, forget that. We need guns and we need ARs and we need to defend ourselves. If anybody try to mess with the Moors, boom, boom. That's that side, right? They talking that way, and I'm saying, hey, we need about peace and love. If we can't come to an understanding on this issue, we could put it before the Supreme Grand Council. And we could say, hey, what do you say about this matter? How should we be conducting ourselves as Moorish Americans? And whatever that ruling is, both parties can respect that ruling. That's law, baby. That's governance. That's how we can really have the Supreme Grand Council address some of the issues that we have between ourselves as Moors and get clarity and understanding so that we can move forward with unity. You feel me? But I don't want to just leave it there. Let me give you another more practical example. One is maybe less controversial, but one that applies to all the temples and all the grand sheiks and all the members. Let's roll it.
Noble Drew Ali wrote a letter to the Moors in 1928 talking about temple tax being necessary because of the fact that the expense of the operation of the temple is increasing so fast that it was found necessary to vote a tax to the prophet to carry out the work. This idea was concurred with the Supreme Grand Council, This act is so arranged that it will be a burden, that it will not be a burden to any of the temples, but the Prophet is very emphatic that it shall not be ignored. The expense of operation has heretofore been taken care of with funds received from the manufacturing department, and it was found that it was a burden on that department. Hence, the tax was necessary. The tax is 25 cents per month per capita. This will mean that the numerical strength of the temple will bear the proper share of the responsibility of the operation. This per capita tax is intended to supply all members alike, governors and grand chiefs included. The governor or officer in charge of each temple will cause a report to be rendered to the Supreme Grand Business Manager of the Supreme Grand Council. 3140 Indiana Avenue, Chicago will specify and itemize the following: number of adepts, number of members, number of new members taken in each month, or those who join after the rendition of the last report. 25 cents must accompany the name of each, such members as the representation tax. The per capita tax collection begins November 1st, 1928. All concerned will save themselves penalized if they render their report promptly and specifically, because otherwise it will necessitate a representative calling on such delinquent temples and auditing their books, which expense will be borne by the temple. All governors and other officers will be held responsible for the representation tax and report by order of the Prophet Kudjo Adwo.
All right, now we getting somewhere. We talking about the temple tax, baby. And as you heard, Noble Drew Ali made it very clear, this emphatically clear. We shall not ignore it, okay? So we must be paying this temple tax. On top of that, you heard him very, very clearly say that this idea was concurred with the Supreme Grand Council. So when Noble Drew Ali introduced this idea was concurred with. They said, you know what? We agree. We stamping this. All right, now we're going to implement this temple tax, okay? So as you can see, the Supreme Grand Council was important, integral in terms of the function, the administrative aspect of our temple. But it doesn't stop just there. The temple tax applied to every subordinate or branch temple and for all the members alike. So it didn't matter if you were the Grand Sheik or the Grand Governor, you had some, cool title, or if you're just a regular member. You just come into the temple and you're just doing your due diligence, and you know what I mean? Everybody got to pay their fair share, and it's just a quarter. Boom, right there. Hit you with that quarter. Get that quarter, you pay the tax for the month. But it didn't stop there. This is the important part that I hope you didn't miss. Let me read it so I'll be clear. That the governor or officer in charge of each temple will cause a report to be rendered to the Supreme Grand Business Manager of the Supreme Grand Council. So that means every single head, Grand Sheik, officer of each of the subordinate temples or the branch temples should be working directly with a representative from the Supreme Grand Council, and every single month should be sending in a report to the Supreme Grand Council via the Supreme Grand Business Manager. This is what's supposed to be going on. Okay, so in terms of practical, actual, tangible proof that we don't have an active and functioning Supreme Grand Council is made clear by the fact that we are not sending in this taxes and this reports into the Supreme Grand Business Manager of the Supreme Grand Council. And don't take my word for it. Simply ask the head of any temple that you're a part of and see, have they been doing this, sending in the report every month as it was ordered by Noble Drew Ali, every month to the Supreme Grand Council via the Supreme Grand Business Manager. Are they paying their taxes? If they are not, which from my research, I'll admit if I'm mistaken, but from my research as a collective, we are not following this law. We are not following the orders of Noble Drew Ali across the board. And we have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to address this issue. And we're going to get there. But I just wanted to put that out there, to put that out there to show and prove that this Supreme Grand Council does have an actual duty, a function, that's not just on a spiritual or religious side at all. It's a very important day-to-day necessary component to our organization, to our nation. You feel me? All right, so a quick recap before we move forward. Gave you a breakdown of the Supreme Grand Council, how it actually works. Gave you some tangible examples of the Supreme Grand Council and how it will work if we are functioning and it's working properly. Also broke down the current problems that we have with the Supreme Grand Council. But with all that being said, I wanted to highlight again the solution that I had put forth, and I had sent a letter out to all the temples and all the different grand sheiks and members of the Moorish Science Temple of America on how we all could work together to solve this issue. So I wanted to highlight just real briefly the 3 steps that I had proposed in the letter that I sent out. And this was the letter here. And it reads, I'm proposing 3 main steps to resolve the Supreme Grand Council issue. Oops. Step 1, all grand sheiks, heads of temples, begin teaching and informing themselves and all the members in the branch temples about the Supreme Grand Council. Inform everybody. Make sure the heads of the temple know and all the members, everybody is informed and well aware and understands what the Supreme Grand Council is. Step 2, once all members of the branch temples are informed about the Supreme Grand Council, have each member write out and submit any questions or concerns about the Supreme Grand Council to the head of their temple, of their respective temple. So in all the branch temples, if anybody anywhere got any sort of questions or concerns about the Supreme Grand Council, they still don't understand this aspect of that, put it forth to your grand sheik or your branch temple, right? Submit all the questions so that way everybody gets their voice heard. Everybody gets a chance to express their concerns or their questions, whatever it is regarding the Supreme Grand Council. And then from there, all the heads of all the branch temples, when they come together as they're supposed to during the convention, everybody comes together from all across the nation. They can bring with them the questions and concerns from their respective branch temples so that way everybody's questions and concerns from across the country can be addressed, all together unified, so that we'll have some clarity and there'll be no stone left unturned. You know what I mean? And so this was the solution that I had put forth and I sent out to all the temples and all the grand sheiks. The idea behind it being that at the convention, we address all these questions, we properly fill the seats of the Supreme Grand Council, and that way we can get rulings and address certain issues and move forward with our organization. That was the solution that I put forth to the people. And now what I want to do before I get to these clips is I want to read this letter, put this on the record also, because it's important. This letter is a Unity Conference letter that is dated April 19th, 1994. It was written by Brother P. Davis Ill, Grand Sheik and Chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Okay? And this letter in 1994 is addressing the Supreme Grand Council issue. I'm just highlight a couple of pieces from it. Right here it says, it is evident by the above statements that the Prophet intended the executive, legislative, and judicial authority, that's government now, executive, legislative, and judicial authority of the Moorish Science Temple of America to be vested in the Supreme Grand Council to ensure the continued success and unity of the movement after his departure. So after Noble Drew Ali's departure, this Supreme Grand Council was still supposed to be in effect. It's integral to our movement. And I wanted to highlight this part here. On May 29th, 1993, here in Chicago, we held a unity meeting at Malcolm X College. Temple heads from Chicago and other cities were present during that session, and we discussed how the Prophet structured the movement, the origin of the first Supreme Grand Council, and what we must do to bring ourselves back into unity. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this is because some people will make the critique about me, oh, well, this is just Rami's thing, and this is what Rami wants to focus on, the Supreme Grand Council. Rami wants. Nah, this ain't my issue. This is not my Supreme Grand Council. Stop trying to personalize it. And that's why I read this. I wanted to put this on the record because this is coming from the Grand Sheik and Chairman back in 1994, 93. I was 9 years old. I had no clue about Noble Drew this movement, etc. I want you to, and also it was speaking about bringing information and awareness about the Supreme Grand Council, how it was originated, and what we need to do to move forward in unity. And the reason why I wanted to highlight that is because the letter that I put out was to all the Grand Sheiks and everybody in all the temples, how we need to inform ourselves and come together and solve these issues so that we can move forward. I just wanted to put that on the record. All right, now let's address, the unfortunate aspect of our movement, but we got to hold ourselves accountable. And the fact is that it's not Europeans or quote-unquote white people that's trying to stop us from the Supreme Grand Council and trying to stop this movement from succeeding. It's, in fact, people that look just like you and me, Moorish Americans wearing feathers and turbans that are going against the teachings of Noble Drew Ali. They're making excuses for not dealing with this issue. They're trying to deflect and detract and steer you away from focusing in on this issue. And I'm about to play some clips, and we're going to talk about it. But before I do, I also just want to make this clear that I'm going to be focusing and using the Canaanland Moors, Kudjo Adwo as an example. But the principle applies to everybody. So I don't want it to get confused as if I'm just trying to pick on this one brother. He's just providing great examples of the issues that we have within this movement and that the issues we have with Moors in this movement. You know what I mean? Not nobody else, not pointing the finger at any other movement, the NOI or this movement and this group and that person and that celebrity, ourselves. So, first up is a clip from about 2015 when there was a call with multiple Grand Sheiks, Canaanland Moor, Kudjo included. He's on the call, and I posed the question to all the Grand Sheiks. Who are the active members of the Supreme Grand Council for the Moorish Science Temple of America? And I want you to listen closely to the response, 2015. Let's roll it.
So, actually, I'm going to read a question that's coming in from Assistant Grand Sheik Rami Salam L. And the question coming through the chat says, does any of the Grand Sheiks know who are the members of the Supreme Grand Council for the Moorish Science Temple of America? Islam.
Islam. I wouldn't have an answer for that question. I yield the floor.
Now, you just heard it. When I posed the question, put it on the table, Brother Kudjo, back in 2015, his response to who are the members of the Supreme Grand Council, I don't have an answer for that. That's unacceptable, especially in the position of a Grand Sheik. You're the leader, the official, the head of the temple. As we highlighted earlier, all the heads of the temples, all the Grand Sheiks are supposed to be working with the Supreme Grand Council via the Supreme Grand Business Manager to submit their reports every month. So it's no way that Brother Kudjo, any Grand Sheik, cannot have an answer for who the members of the Supreme Grand Council are, because they have to work directly with them to submit their records and their documents and the taxes. You see? But I want to highlight that only to show you when we move forward to the present, his tone changed. And it changed because I began to become more vocal about us addressing this issue and holding ourselves accountable. And what I began to realize, and what I want you to see, especially Moors, new Moors out there, Moorish Americans is just coming into this. What I want you to understand is that we have many brothers and sisters that are afraid to address this issue because they will be held accountable. In their past works, they weren't doing what they were supposed to, and for whatever reason, they want to avoid accepting responsibility and accountability. And so, as a result, rather than addressing and admitting, you know what, we messed up, we didn't do this, we need to get on track, rather than be honest, right, and be noble about it, making the correction, because we're not perfect, but rather than them do that, they make excuses, they point blame, they deflect. But I don't want you to just believe me. I want you to listen and pay attention. Now hear his response about the Supreme Grand Council here in 2021. And notice the difference.
So back to the letter. I personally have been researching and speaking on Supreme Grand Council for the past 6 years, right? So he's been personally researching and speaking on the Supreme Grand Council for the past 6 years. Has he talked with the Supreme Grand Council in the past 6 years? They exist. It's not like they don't exist and you can't find them. And then how come he hasn't talked to them personally? And then if the response is, well, I tried to call them and they didn't answer, then what the hell does that tell you? Yeah, March 3rd, 2021. As of today, March 3rd, 2021, we do not have an active and functioning Supreme Grand Council. Yes, there is an active and functioning Supreme Grand Council. It exists. It's out there. But we know that those people are the traitors. We know without a shadow of a doubt that they're the traitors.
Okay, as you saw and heard, in 2015, the tone was way different. When it was Grand Sheiks on the call and the question was put forth on the table, who were the active members of the Supreme Grand Council? Kudjo's response was, I don't have an answer for that. And to be fair, the rest of the Grand Sheiks on the call didn't provide answers either. But I want to highlight this specific point. Because now, fast forward, after some years of me continually pressing this issue, calling for us all to be held accountable, all of these Grand Sheiks, Kudjo included, because as you heard in the beginning, there are no favorites in any of the temples. We all got to be governed accordingly, right? And once I started applying pressure and saying, hey, we need to fix this issue, all of a sudden, the tone changed with Kudjo. You know what I mean? To avoid having accountability and realizing, you know what, I wasn't on my job. So to avoid that, now the answer changed. Now is, oh, we do have a Supreme Rank. They're out there. They have a website and a P.O. box. You just got to look them up. So what happened? What changed? Was he being dishonest back in 2015? Did all of a sudden they come into existence between now and then? No. The truth was, back then and now, Brother Kudjo and many Grand Sheiks, to be fair, are unwilling to address this issue. And rather than just admit, you know what, we haven't been doing our job, let's deflect. And if you notice, even in him saying that, he then went on to say that the people in the seats are frauds and traitors. So what sense does that make? 2015, he's saying he didn't have an answer. He didn't know who was the members. Now, all of a sudden, he's saying, oh, we do have a Supreme Rank, and it is active, but the people in those seats are frauds, and they're not the right people in the seats. What are we doing to address that? Has Kudjo done anything to address that? But not just him. Take that principle and apply it to all Grand Sheiks, all Grand Governors, all heads of temples. If there are people in those seats and they're not valid, which they aren't because they had to be elected in, everybody had to vote on it, the grand body had to put them in the seats, all the heads of the temple that come together to make the grand body, that's part of the process, part of the law. If that didn't happen and they're not valid, then we need to address that. But the key is do whatever you can to avoid taking accountability and addressing this issue. That's what I want to focus. I want to keep hammering that point home. I want you to pay attention as we continue on with these clips. Let's go to another one.
You know, like somebody saying, for example, oh yeah, Rami and Kudjo need to have grown man conversations so that we have a book together. The hell are you talking about? What where was the Supreme Grand Council talk when we were writing this book? What do you mean you didn't know? We already had info about all this. We've been had Moorish literature and all that stuff. He's been on stage with Taj Tariq Bey and all that stuff lecturing. Then all of a sudden, the only focus that he has is Supreme Grand Council, to the point where he doesn't even promote his own books that he wrote. Something's wrong there. Something's going on there.
When I was preparing for this lesson, I really did my best to avoid addressing any of the personal attacks that the brother was throwing at me, just because it isn't necessary, you know what I mean, to try to defend myself in that way. But with this particular point, I wanted to highlight some things because it was important. You know, he said, we wrote a book together. Where was all of this Supreme Grand Council talk when we was writing a book together? And when he was on stage teaching with Taj, how come he wasn't talking about that then? And why is it that he's so focused on this that he won't promote his book? And I want to highlight this point because it's important to show my intention. The book that we put out, that I don't really like to promote for a bunch of reasons, but one of the main reasons is the conduct of you, brother. The conduct of Kudjo is not something that I want to be associated with. And I tried speaking with him behind the scenes, tried speaking publicly, asking, hey, man, can we talk to our people more respectfully? Stop calling them dumb and stupid, and these words is very harsh. That's not loving. He didn't want to listen to that, so I had to separate myself from that energy. I couldn't be around that energy. Beyond that, though, the book was published March 13th, 2015. The lecture I did with Taj Tariq Bey, much love to the elder, that was, I believe, in April of 2015. And the first video that I published about the Supreme Grand Council is dated September 17th, 2015. So, just to highlight the timeline, in March 2015 was when the book came out. I was teaching with Taj, let's call it June 2015, just to be on the safe, June, July 2015. September 17th was when I first put out the video regarding the Supreme Grand Council. What changed? Something happened. Yes, something did happen. I kept studying, and I read very closely the teachings of Noble Drew Ali because I was becoming very active. I was teaching a study group every other week. I had a newsletter going, the books going, the videos going, the teaching going. You know what I mean? It was a lot going on, but it was something that just wasn't making sense to me. So I said, all right, go back, study what's going on. What are you missing? And then I said, this Supreme Grand Council, how come nobody's talking about this? And so then I began to ask the question, who are the members? Where are they at right now? We need some help with this. And as the years went on, people kept avoiding this issue. They didn't want to address the topic. Like you saw earlier, Kudjo, I don't have an answer for that. And that's what made me focus in even more. I said, I can't move forward with any of this stuff until I get this question answered. Because this doesn't make sense. This is too important for our movement for nobody to be able to just simply tell me who's on the council. It's a simple question. So that's what happened. And I wanted to just put that on the record so that you can see my intention. No, I'm not promoting the book because the book is not more important than the Supreme Grand Council. Please understand that. We cannot move forward as a nation, as an organization. We're not going to be able to move forward and prosper and function properly if we don't address this issue. That is why I haven't moved from this issue. I hope that's clear. And I also hope it's clear deflection. him even bringing that up is an attempt to distract you, to get you off the point, the focus. And we're going to bring it right on back. Supreme Grand Council. That's on the table. That's the issue that we're dealing with. And we're not going to move. I want them to keep playing the clips, but I just want you to understand these are tactics that I've seen many Moorish Americans use to avoid addressing the issue. But we're going to address it because we got time today. That's clear.
Well, Noble Drew Ali said we should have a Supreme Grand Council. Okay, Noble Drew Ali said we're supposed to have Grand Treasury too. Where's that at? And how come nobody's talking about that? Because guarantee if we had a Supreme Grand Treasury, we wouldn't even be worried about some Supreme Grand Council. So there'll be so much finance in this thing that everybody's going to be good. We don't even need that.
That was another example of deflection. Supreme Grand Council. Well, what about the Grand Treasury? How come nobody's talking about that? Well, we can talk about that. But first, let's address the Supreme Grand Council. And then on top of that, trying to make it seem as though, well, if we talk about the Grand Treasury, we won't even care about the Supreme. No. The Supreme Grand Council has the duty and the obligation to control and supervise all of the affairs of the Moorish Science Temple of America. So that's overarching any and everything that we do, including the Grand Treasury. So it's not a Grand Treasury or the Supreme Grand Council. Please don't fall for that, Moors. Please don't fall for that. But don't believe me. I want you to study the Moorish literature for yourself. Again, that's why I went back to understanding what the Supreme Grand Council is about, because it's not just about finance. But let's continue. I just want to highlight these things as we move forward.
And again, with this idea of Grand Major Temple, Supreme Grand Council, Grand Treasury, Grand this, Grand that, all those things have run its course.
Are you paying attention, Moors? Are you seeing the continual attempts to deflect, to steer away from, to do everything you can to avoid addressing the Supreme Grand Council issue? Just a minute ago, he was talking about, well, if we had the Grand Treasury, we wouldn't need the Supreme Grand Council. And now you just heard him say, well, that Grand Treasury, that Supreme Grand Council, all that kind of stuff, it's ran its course. No, it hasn't ran its course. It's not a run its course thing. It functions with our organization. We need it. We need the Supreme Grand Council for our organization to function properly. Rather than say it's run its course, a truer statement is without the Supreme Grand Council, our organization cannot run properly. So it's not about it running its course. It's supposed to be operating hand in hand with all the other things that's going on within our organization. It's the engine. You know what I mean? Like a car. If you ain't got the engine in the car, your car ain't going to run nowhere. It can't run no sort of course. It's going to stay right there and be stagnant. Does that make sense? Let's not stop there. Let's go to the next one.
All that to say that if people are doing corrupt stuff, they're going to do their corrupt stuff. And there's nothing that you could do to stop them from doing the corrupt stuff that they're doing. All you could do is do your own thing. So figure we do our own thing. All you could do is do your own thing. So figure we do our own thing. All you could do is do your own thing. So figure we do our own thing.
Now it was so much wrong with his mentality and what he said in that last clip, but I'm thankful and grateful that he said it because it highlights a problem we have in this movement. The first thing he said, the people that are doing corrupt stuff, they're going to do their corrupt stuff, and there's nothing that you can do about it. That is false. That is incorrect. That is not true. Noble Drew Ali, in our Quran, it teaches us that Allah provided us with good. Let me read it real quick. Allah hath given thee no good without his admixture of evil, but he hath given thee also the means of throwing off the evil from it. Praise Allah. Going back to the warning from the Prophet, what I read earlier. This is from Noble Drew Ali. If any of the laws are violated, any body of Grand Sheikh or Sheiks can file a charge against the violation to the Grand Body over which the Prophet presides. Okay? And another section, the Prophet has spoken. The head of every temple must by law obey the word of the Prophet. And if any leader or head of any temple, fails to obey these laws, embezzlement is his charge and is subject to enforcement of the law by the Grand Body. And the penalty may be a fine or a removal from office and placed under a very heavy restriction of the law. Supreme words of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And let me just highlight also the Grand Body. That is all executive rulers. Let me read it for you just so that you have the facts here. Here we go. And this is all coming from Moorish literature. I'll drop the link in the description so you can see it for yourself. This one is to all governors, grand sheiks, and head officials of the temple. During this convention period, Noble Drew Ali said on the 17th of October, he was going to appoint 7 men tried and true and accepted by you. And on the very next day, Noble Drew Ali stepped forward from the chamber room and declared he now had his number and said the Grand Body had accepted his choice in the setting of the Supreme Grand Council of the Moorish Science Temple of America. And Prophet Noble Drew Ali also declared what their duties in conjunction with that of the Grand Body, which consist of all executive rulers, chief rulers, governors, etc. So just to highlight again, okay, the Grand Body, the group that is in charge for enforcement of the law, right? If anybody is violating the law, the Grand Body is in charge of enforcing the law, and the Grand Body is composed of, or it makes us, it's all the people that's in the Grand Body is executive rulers, grand governors, grand sheiks, etc. So his statement, that there's nothing that you can do about it, is completely false. In fact, as a grand sheik, he has an obligation to help enforce the law as part of the Grand Body, working in conjunction with the Supreme Grand Council. That is government. That's government, brothers and sisters. That is how we are supposed to operate. Really and truly, by the facts, by the way Noble Drew Ali laid it down. And the second part of what he said, which is even more problematic, the only thing he said, the only thing you can do is just do your own thing. And so we did our own thing. Brothers and sisters, Moors, Moorish Americans, people watching this video, that is precisely the problem with this movement, with our movement. We have too many people just doing their own thing, not following the laws and the teachings of Noble Drew Ali. They just feel, hey, man, I'm going to just do my own thing. Yeah, I see that the temple has some issues and there's some people in these seats that are claiming to be this, that, and the third, and they're not valid or they're not lawful. But instead of addressing that, instead of cleaning up the temple, I'm going to just do my own thing. And as a result, we have so many different these spin-off and, these movements that are taking some of Noble Drew Ali's teachings and mixing in whatever they want, doing their own thing. And it's caused so much confusion among our people and just among people in general, to where now our movement can be confused with domestic terrorism, can be confused with sovereign citizens. And that should not be the case. But I say all of that to say we have to fix it. We have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to clean up the temple. We have to get the Supreme Grand Council fixed. We have to get it back and functioning how it's supposed to be. And Yeah, I think I'm gonna close out with that. I wanted to make this video as best I could to present facts and evidence. And what I want to do is either later on today, when you see this video. I mean, it's 2:30 in the morning now, and I'm gonna publish this video to later on this morning. And I think either after the video today or maybe tomorrow, which is our holy day, the 7th of May, I'll go live and I can respond to any questions, any concerns that you may have. If there was anything that I didn't address in this video regarding the Supreme Grand Council, please ask me when I go live. You can email me if you want further information, iamhhtemple@gmail.com. Again, iamhhtemple@gmail.com. I'm Rami Salam El. I thank you for watching. Please study this information for yourself. Don't go off of what I say. Don't listen to what other Moors you see on the internet say. First, start with what Noble Drew Ali said. This is very key as I close out, especially if you're new to this. Study what Noble Drew Ali said, and then go listen to what other people are saying and judge whoever it is based off of Noble Drew Ali's teachings. And if what they say don't match up to what Noble Drew Ali was teaching, they're in the wrong. They're incorrect. And even I'm incorrect. You can hold me accountable, please. If I'm off course, please correct me. Help me get back on track. We got to be responsible. We got to hold ourselves accountable. And then, and as I close out, what we always got to do, what's most important, study the Quran, but what's most important is that love. The 5 principles: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, but we got to lead with love. Love instead of hate. Love is the key. Love is the way. I'll see you soon. Much love to you. Keep shining. Keep studying. Yeah, peace.